Welcome to this week's webinar with Sustainability Partnerships. Today we're talking about reduce, reuse and recycle within the NHS. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today. We've got 4 panellists who are going to talk about both similar and differing topics today. So we've got a real full house. I'm not going to do as much of an intro as I normally do because I want to make sure that we give everyone as much time as possible to go through all of the great presentations that they've managed to put together for today. I'm Georgia Holson. I am Director at Sustainability Partnerships, so I will be your host as usual. I'd love for everyone to please use the chat function as much as you like, just to say hello, add your contact details, anything that you would like to comment on, have your own conversations as usual in that chat function. If you do have a specific question, please use the Q&A function. So at the end, I will be able to pose those questions to our panelists. So as I mentioned, we do have a real full house today. We are very lucky to be joined by Richard Hickson. He'll give us a bit of an intro when he starts. He's then going to hand over to Dan here from Economics. Then we've got Luke, and he is going to then pass over to Hagai, and those guys will give intros to themselves when they join as well, because they'll be much better at doing it than I will. So I'm not going to go on for much longer. I'm just letting a few more people join now that we're just sort of a minute past the hour. But I'm going to jump straight to you, Richard. I have a feeling there might be quite a few people in this audience who already know who you are, because you do sort of have a bit of a reputation, don't you, particularly in these circles. So why don't you, for those of you who don't know who Richard is, why don't you give us a bit of an intro to who you are and what you're going to talk about today, please, Richard?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Georgia. Can you hear me okay, and can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, fantastic. So shall I just kind of kick off? Because my introduction is, my first slide is my introduction to me as well. So shall I just kind of kick off and then just carry on?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, thanks very much for the invite, Georgia. I'm Richard Hickson. I'm a consultant in critical care medicine. I've been a consultant for about 23 years now. I'm co-founder of Healthcare Ocean, a not-for-profit which has existed since October 2020. We give the ocean a voice in human healthcare strategy, advocating for the inclusion of ocean health in all of our planning, because we cannot survive or thrive without a healthy ocean. I am a member of NHS England's Sustainable Procurement Forum. I'm a member of the UK Ocean Decade Committee, which is one of the UN committees. I'm a healthcare advisor to Proteus Ocean Group, which is building the first underwater space station of the ocean. It's an observatory and a research platform which will enable scientists, innovators, and global customers to search for some of the solutions to some of the world's most pressing oceanic problems. So that's a pretty cool project. And I am a member of the Minderoo Monaco Commission on Plastics and Human Health, and that's where my kind of credibility comes from, I hope, in the space of plastics and healthcare. And that QR code will lead you to a very short 280-page report that we produced a couple of years ago. So I think, just as background, and I really like to start with planetary boundaries as a topic, because we are quite carbon focused still, and yet we need to be thinking a lot more broadly. So there are 9 planetary boundaries which have been defined by the Stockholm Resilience Centre. These are the boundaries within which humanity can develop and thrive. When they were set up or defined in 2009, we breached 2.5 of the planetary boundaries. In 2015, 3.5. In 2023, we have breached 6, and we are likely this year to breach the 7th of ocean acidification. Now, we hear plenty about CO2, and obviously we talk about this an awful lot within the NHS. But I'd like to think of the 9 planetary boundaries in terms of 3 critical areas: climate, pollution, and nature. What is known as and the threat to these is known as the triple planetary crisis. So as I mentioned, with respect to climate, we have Net Zero NHS, which is a critical document which defines our ambition. But one of the things that I really think is worthwhile just kind of touching upon with net zero just very, very briefly is that at the moment, our national determined contributions, this is globally as defined by the IPCC, we are on the red line at the moment. And for net zero, we need to be heading down this blue line. So net zero by 2050 and net negative thereafter. And it is this net negative bit that is really, really critical, because in order to get to where we need to be in terms of atmospheric CO2, we're presently sitting at about 422 parts per million. We have to be down at 350 parts per million if we are to reverse some of the impacts that we are presently seeing from climate change and high CO2. So in order to do that, we can't just reduce emissions, we have to sequester CO2 from the atmosphere. So this kind of drop here from the national determined contributions, the line we're on, down to net zero by 2050, relies upon us reducing emissions and increasing sequestration from the atmosphere. Now, sequestration takes place in various places. It takes place in trees, but unfortunately, from the planetary boundaries, we know that one of these planetary boundaries, it is related to global forestation, and we have breached this in terms of deforestation. So we cannot, at the moment, we're not doing very well on the tree side of sequestration. Land-based use, again, this can lead to gigatons worth of sequestration, but unfortunately, again, we are not doing very well because land is being turned over to agriculture to feed a growing population. We have coastal blue carbon sequestration, which if we get right, will probably sequester about a gigaton of CO2. But that's pretty much a maximum. We obviously at the moment put out about 36 gigatons of CO2. So we have a long way to go if we consider we're not doing well with trees, not doing well with land, and the blue carbon is probably about a gigaton. We then kind of hear a lot about tech, but at the moment that is really scratching the surface. Tech is talking about kind of millions of tons rather than billions of tons. And although it probably will be necessary to an extent, it won't be a solution. And then the reason why we formed Healthcare Ocean is because this wonderful space here called the ocean is home to billions of tons of photosynthesizing biomass, but we need the ocean to be healthy for it to do its job in sequestering carbon. Now, the problem with pollution, it not only costs the planet about 2 gigatons of CO2 to process, but it also reduces the sequestration capacity of our natural system. So, and I want to kind of start focusing now on plastic, because this is such a huge problem. So plastic, it's a major pollutant. It has enabled many, many developments in human civilization, including healthcare, but it is responsible for 2 gigatons of CO2 per year. So it is part of net zero. You cannot get to net zero without addressing plastic pollution. Plastic production has increased 230 times since 1950, and most of that is now sitting in the ecosystem somewhere as waste. And it pollutes the ecosystem and also reduces its sequestration capacity from the fact that it is these compounds themselves are extremely toxic. The problem is now, the problem is increasing. Plastic production is predicted to double by 2040 and triple by 2060. 90% of ocean plastics are microplastics. They're fed upon by these zooplankton, these small organisms, and they get concentrated within our food chain. And ultimately, they have found their ways in microplastics has found their way into about 1,300 species. They lead to physical harm and chemical harm to the species, all the way up the food chain to these top apex predators, including ourselves. Now, plastics are very, very simple monomers that are put together to form polymers. But plastic endangers planetary and human health at every stage of its life cycle, from the plastic workers that mine the fossil fuels in order to create the plastic, to those that undertake fracking, the cracking of plastics, the monomers to create ethylenes and propylenes in order to create the polymers, All the fence line communities tend to be more poorer communities, which are impacted by the chemical contamination that come out of these big factories, all the way through to those who use plastic, and also through to those impacted by its disposal. And the problem with plastic is it's not just the polymers, it is the fact that they are full of hazardous chemicals. So there's been about 16,000 chemicals. The Mindry Monaco Commission kind of highlights about 10,500. The Scientist Coalition has highlighted about 16,000 chemicals, some of which are endocrine disrupting, and they cause an impact in extremely low concentration. But basically, the chemicals within plastics causes harm, death, disability, and disease at absolutely every stage of their life cycle. And we are now seeing an awful lot of human harms being associated with plastics. And we're starting to see this really explicitly kind of stated now in the literature, where scientists are really wanting to kind of like figure out what the impact of plastics are on human health. So we, as a healthcare organization, certainly I am extremely keen to see us use fewer plastics. We have the UNEP Plastics Treaty negotiations ongoing at the moment. And although healthcare may be seen as being essential use plastics, we are not exempt from our responsibilities, especially with respect to the fact that these cause harm to humans throughout their life cycle. Many items in the plastic that we use are non-essential, and so we have a responsibility as healthcare professionals to really educate on plastics and not using them whenever possible. Within the healthcare space, our most powerful action is to refuse to use them and reduce by just simply not opening equipment unless we absolutely need it, not using gloves unless we absolutely need to, in order to reduce the demand pull on fossil fuel plastics. We have a responsibility to audition and try out new products, especially when they are what we consider to be slightly less harmful plastics like thermoplastic elastomers and polypropylene. We should not be using PVC if at all possible. We should extend the duration of use of our products as much as possible, such as this Safe Set Flush by B. Braun, where we can actually use these giving sets multiple times by looping back the distal ends and connecting them to the flush ports between drug administration. We can demedicalize our patients. We can look at things such as our use of intravenous drugs and try and give drugs orally whenever possible. And we can work with procurement to very clearly explain that plastics themselves are associated with harm. And therefore, if we are forced to use high plastic products or high plastic mass products, then that is not acceptable, because as healthcare professionals, our goal should always be to first do no harm to patients and planet. And of course, we must promote circularity, reusable devices whenever possible, but there are some single-use devices like these Ambu A-scopes, which are absolutely essential to progress patients in areas such as critical care. If we remove these and we went back to a reusable, say, Olympus device, I remember the days when we had these. It was very hard to progress patients because they were often broken, out for repair, or undergoing the 50-mile round trip to be sterilized. So one other massive area that we can look at, which we have found to be extremely beneficial, is optimizing our waste pathways. Of course, we want to recycle all we can, but that is very difficult. So what we did was we looked at our pathways. We had these giving sets, which were traditionally classed as sharps because of the little spiky bit in here, and they would go into the yellow waste stream. We decided that you really had to work hard to spike yourself on one of these, so the risk was very low. So we redirected these into our blue medicinal waste streams. Now, the blue medicinal waste stream, and we did this about 8 years ago, by the way, and we haven't had an instance since. This blue waste stream, it's to travel 16 miles. There is no pre-processing. The energy we generate from the incineration of this waste stream goes back into the grid. We use these low plastic bio bins as opposed to the higher plastic, cheaper version. And it is quite a reasonable price to dispose, compared to the yellow waste stream, where we used to put these allegedly spiky giving sets into many years ago. They travel a long way. They require pre-processing, no energy back to the grid, high plastic cost if you use disposable, sharp spins, and it's extremely expensive. So for our 1 ITU making this change, we save 2.3 tons of plastic per year just in the sharp spins. We redirect 6.4 tons of sharp spin waste to a better waste stream and generate energy from waste. We save over £5,500 a year in procurement and disposal costs, and there is less impact on staff time. So my call to action here is to simply analyze your waste streams, map them out, figure out the best way to dispose of your waste, because it really does have a massive impact on your environmental footprint from the perspective of plastic use, miles traveled, CO2 generated, and whether or not you can utilize the energy that you generate from the disposal of your waste. This is an action that any clinical unit can undertake tomorrow with a little bit of internal analysis, and I finally recommend you undertake this. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over to Dan.
Thanks, Richard. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Maudsley, and I'm the Commercial Director of Econics, and we design, manufacture and distribute the paper-based clinical waste container, the BioBin, which Richard mentioned in his presentation earlier. So last year in England, the NHS alone produced around 156,000 tonnes of clinical waste. So much of that ended up in plastic containers, plastic bags made from fossil fuels, which then went to be incinerated, burning at high temperatures, requiring significant extra energy, which ultimately produced more CO2. So how can you help to reduce the amount of CO2 that gets released? By making a really simple change to your waste strategy. And that's by using one of these. So this is a BioBin. So our bins are designed for non-sharps waste. So for sharps waste, as Richard mentioned, you can still use a reusable sharps bin. They're made 96% from paper, which is sourced from an FSC certified forest, meaning the paper is managed responsibly and sustainably. They arrive fold flat like this, so they save loads of space in your storerooms. And when you open them up, just like so, inside, you'll be able to see that each one comes with a biomat, which can absorb, generally speaking, up to about 10% of the total volume of the bin. Each one of our bins, and this is one I made earlier, Blue Peter style, comes with a Velcro temporary seal, which you can simply press down like that. So if you're worried about your bin tipping over and things falling out, or if you're in quite a high volume or high traffic area, you can simply put the temporary seal on, and the final seal is a sticky strip that runs all the way along the bin. So you peel this off, push that down, and simply it folds like that. And this can be disposed of in your normal waste stream. No lids, and most importantly, huge reduction in the amount of plastic. Once the bin is shut, they're stackable, and all our bins are UN 3291 approved, so they comply with all UK and European law around hazardous waste transportation. All the major waste collection companies also take them, so Sodexo, Stericycle, and the rest of them. So I'm just going to share my screen a second and take you through a very short presentation on some of the sustainability credentials and also some of the range of our bins. So to start with, we have the 1 litre bin, and these are the sizes we've got. So we've got a 1 litre bin, which is the one I just showed you. Now, biggest currently, though we might be working on something else, is the 30 litre bin, which is our biggest bin. In between, we've got the 2 litre and 5 litre. Then we've got specialist lab bins. So we have a loop bin for microbiology loops and a 6 litre long pipette bin for serological pipettes and stripettes, which is widely used in laboratories. We also have a sanitary bin and a placenta pack, which comes with a small bag for placentas, and they're becoming increasingly more popular in maternity units instead of the plastic tubs that are being used at the moment. And lastly, we've got a selection of accessories which can keep your bin off the floor. If you're mopping underneath or on a bench, they might want to be at a certain angle so you can put your waste in ergonomically and very easily. Here's a selection of some of the examples of the wonderful people who are already using the bins in the NHS and in labs. And you can see here some of the use cases. So some of the larger 30 litre bins are being used in intensive care units, such as the one Richard is in the top right. These are being used for almost all hazardous waste that's produced in the ICUs. And because they have an absorbent mat in the bottom, they're easily able to absorb all the really strong and harmful drugs that may still be present in some of the sets and medicine, which can sometimes impact nurses and doctors working on the wards. Without the biobin absorbent mat, drugs can pool in the bottom of the plastic bags and tubs, resulting in hazardous chemicals being released into the atmosphere, creating an occupational hazard for the nurses and doctors. You can see here as well across the other pictures, the other kinds of bins that we've got. So in the top left-hand corner, you've got the offensive bins. Bottom right-hand corner, you've got bins for alternative treatment. We've also have cytotoxic bins at the bottom, the purple ones. And not shown here, we've got plain ones and red ones for anatomical waste as well. So there really are so many use cases. So regarding the sustainability of the bin, we had a third party called Blue Marble conduct a full life cycle assessment of our 3 most popular bins: the 5-litre bin, 6-litre bin, and 30-litre bin. The results speak for themselves, as you can see here. So the cradle to grave assessment, which really measures everything that goes into the bin and the incineration as well, has the 5-litre bin with a carbon footprint of around 180 grams. Now, if you compare that to a full polypropylene bin, that has a carbon footprint of around 2.12 kilograms. So just from switching one bin, you can save 2 kilograms of CO2, and that's a carbon saving of around 91%. Even for bins made with 100% recycled material, there's still a huge carbon saving to be made. And if you'd like to go and find out how much carbon you can save in your trust, in your ward, in your lab, hospital, wherever it might be, simply go onto our website and we've got a carbon calculator on there. So you can put in how many plastic bins you're using at the moment, what material they're made of, whether they're virgin plastic, part recycled or fully recycled, and it'll spit out here exactly how much carbon or CO2 you can save per year. And then it will translate that to how many trees that's saving or how many kilometers in a car that's going. So what does this mean in practice? Well, a few years ago, we worked with Newcastle upon Tyne NHS Foundation Trust to replace all their rigid waste containers, their plastic ones, which accounted for about 30 to 40% of the trust's incineration bill. The biobins were placed in high usage areas as a trial and then fully rolled out across the trust, and we work with them to provide education, training and support. And you can see the results for yourselves. So on average, they're 21p cheaper to burn than a plastic bin because of the weight, because they weigh a lot less. They produce obviously a lot less CO2. They take up loads less space in the storeroom, and I know how strapped everyone is for that. And lastly, most importantly, the hospital was able to make a cost saving as well, which really helps when procurement are involved. So if you're interested in trying the bins or you want some more information on them, simply go to our website and you can request a free sample and we'll send one to wherever you're working. You can have a play around with them, see how they might fit in the lab or the ward or the hospital, and trial them out. You're also able to order all our bins on the NHS supply chain. Simply search Econics or bio-bin in the search and they'll bring them all up. Or you can order direct or via our distributors such as Lampadina. So Luke, so thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much to both of you guys for kicking this off with such great presentations, great energy as well. And I can see loads of people are getting involved in the webinar chat. If anyone wants to say hello, leave your contact details, just start, Alexis has pointed out that these would be great in the ambulance industry. So any thoughts, any comments, use that chat and chat with each other throughout the webinar. If you do have any specific questions, please use the Q&A and I will pose them to all of our speakers in the Q&A session afterwards. So Richard, thank you so much for making it very, very plain what we need to do in the fight towards plastics. I didn't realise that we were going to get so scientific with it, but I absolutely appreciate the depth, the molecular understanding that you went to on this subject. Really, really did it justice. And Dan, we don't generally have real life Blue Peter style presentations on these webinars. It's probably the first time I've seen Anna. I really, really appreciated it. And he will send you a bin out. He will send them to anyone, believe me, because I've had one and we've had a play and they're very, very good, good quality and great to work with as well. So As usual, all of our presentations, that link that Richard mentioned about the critical net zero massive document, that will be in our write-up as well. So what I'm going to do now is move on to yourself. Look, sorry, I do have Abigail. She's raised her hand. Abigail, we don't really have the resource to allow you to speak on the webinar yourself, but if you do have a question or a comment, can you please just either use the web chat or the Q&A section there? I'm not able to. No, it's okay. There was an accident. Right. Look, I am going to hand straight over to you. Please let us know. Dan's already kind of alluded that you guys work together a little bit. So please let me know who you are and what you're going to go through with us today.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you both, Dan and Richard, two excellent presentations there. I can't promise mine's going to be quite as professional, but thank you for the opportunity nonetheless to present to everyone. My name's Luke. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at CG Optic, which is part of Lampadina Group. And I'm just going to go through, if it's okay, the Lampadina Group itself, because I think it's an interesting journey, a sustainability journey that we've been on as a business. I'm going to highlight some plastic reducing products akin to Dan's excellent presentation then. And then finally, as a last resort, as Richard alluded to, we are going to have to be sort of stuck with plastic moving forward. So we're going to look at recycling, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague, a guy from Embermed, who's going to talk through a very useful product that could sit on site and really help people with their plastic processing. So without further ado, Lampadina Group is made up of 3 constituent parts. So CG Optic is a dental microscope supplier. We supply very high quality microscopes into private and NHS dentists within the UK. It's German manufactured, and it kicked off our sustainability journey by really making us realise that actually there's great value in equipment that's already out there. So we do a lot of part exchanges with our microscopes. So we put a brand new shiny CG Optic microscope into the dental practice, and we take away their old microscope and recondition it. And that's where we started with the sort of reuse element of reduce, reuse, recycle. So that got us thinking, and we formed Lampadina Medical, which focused more on taking equipment, particularly out of the NHS, where I have to say it's very well looked after, and the products are actually serviced properly, and they can be resold in very good condition. So we expanded into endoscopes and ultrasounds and other bits of kit that come out of the NHS. As I say, our private customers love NHS equipment because it's always very well looked after. So that was further reusing products. And then we tried to expand into sort of low energy equipment. So we partnered with a company called Heya, who do low energy freezers, liquid nitrogen with low loss. And then we looked into PPE, which I know Richard highlighted earlier is very wasteful. We looked at biodegradable gloves, which aren't always applicable, I know, because sometimes they go for incineration, lighting, and then renewable material replacements such as biobins, which Dan's done a great job of demonstrating. I won't pretend to do anywhere near as good a job. And then an alternative called wood safe as well, which, as Dan highlighted, there is one slight flaw to biobins that they can't take sharps, but we have a solution for that as well, which I'll go through shortly. The final part of the group is Lampadina Scientific, and this is where we focus on the recycling side. So we do have further products for reducing. So if anyone's within genetics laboratories or pathology here, we have plant-based Petri dishes. We have kits that reduce, forgive me, I don't work for this part of the company, so I'm kind of fluffing my line slightly, but we have kits that actually combine 2 DNA kits together. So the extraction and the amplification in one single kit. So we're removing a full kit of plastic off the market, as well as a full kit of cost as well. We then looked at a more holistic approach, so actually green energy procurement, so making sure the energy that your equipment does use and your lights do use is actually renewable as well. So we've kind of ticked all boxes, hopefully, across the group with reduce, reuse, and recycle. So as I said, I'm going to focus on a couple of highlight products that I think may be interesting to the delegates here. So and these are really a perfect companion to the biobins. So as I said, not everything can go into the biobins, particularly sharps. And for that, we have these wood safe products. So they are 80% renewable material, which is actually wood pulp. They are available in all the mandatory colouring. So as Richard highlighted, you can get them into the right waste stream. And same as the biobins, they do have a carbon calculator, which is really useful, as Dan highlighted, prior to making the switch to see if it's worthwhile, which it almost always is. And post, so you can actually collect that data and report back on the savings your trust has made. The second product is a little bit less field. It's a biocide, a natural biocide. It's actually made from hypochlorous acid, which is salt and water. citric acid, and a surfactant. It's still, despite being safe to be used without PPE, it actually kills the log4, and it comes in refillable bottles. But the main difference here and the main saving in plastic, it comes when compared to wipes. So there's an ongoing trial with the ambulance service at the moment to try and replace alcohol wipes with Natural Armor, taking a huge amount of wipes off the market, but also the packaging that they come in, which is often tubs or plastic packaging. So hopefully, if that trial goes well, we can feed that back to everyone and make sure that everyone has a look at Natural Armor. And again, as Dan does, we can ship samples to anyone. So please let us know if that was of interest. So Natural Armor is available in 1,000-litre IBCs as well, so you can refill the bottles as well. So further plastic reduction. Unfortunately, despite all the reducing and reusing that we're trying to promote, and the great products like BioBins, which we are a big champion of, and of course WoodSafe, there is always going to be a place for plastic, unfortunately. Sorry, Richard. It's too good a product within science and medical arena. You know, it can be sterilized pre and post usage. It's watertight and it's very cheap as well. So it does make the perfect solution for a lot of products within the medical industry. And that's where, again, as Richard highlighted, recycling has to come in. So we have two options with regard to waste, I should say. And that matches the sort of size and budget of the operation. So for small medical, dental, veterinary practices, we have the recycling method through a company called Recycle Lab. And then for larger healthcare hospitals, we have the EnvaMed solution, which I'll leave Hagai to go through in more detail. But essentially, both methods are quantifiable, so you can actually come out with data to show the reductions you've made and the CO2 savings. So in a little more detail, the Recycle Lab option is for hazardous and non-hazardous plastic waste. It's collated on site. It's then treated either with Natural Armor, which is a much more sustainable way of doing it, or sort of belt and braces approach with an autoclave. It's swabbed with an ATP swab as a guide to see that it makes sure the sterilization method worked. It's then collected by our recycling partners and taken for recycling and turned into, hopefully, more medical device products. Often it is cheaper than the cost of incineration, and Richard very kindly highlighted the cost involved in incineration of yellow bags and things like that. So often it can be either cost neutral or even a saving based on incineration. The second method is going to be going into more detail through via Hagai, but basically it's a system that sits on site. It treats the waste and shreds it, so it drastically reduces the volume of waste going off site. So that means less lorries collecting waste every day from hospitals. But also, if you segregate your waste and make sure that you put in good quality plastic of the same type into the instrument, you may well end up with a commodity at the end that can be sold to recyclers to form new products. So a full circular economy within your site. So I will now hand over to Hagai to go in more detail through the EnvaMed solution.
Thanks, Luke, and thank you everybody for joining. And I'm really, first of all, excited, and second, I'm very happy to be here and to present EnvaMed solution. I hope you see my presentation, and I will apologize that English is not my original language, but I will try to do my best. So EnvaMed. EnvaMed founded in 2019. By the way, I'm the CEO of EnvaMed. Founded in 2019 and owned by Mabarot Group, which is a very big group in Israel. We have our headquarters in Israel and global network of distributors all around the world. We are a very small company, but but growing. And we are developing technologies for medical waste treatment, for infectious medical waste treatment. As we know, there is a very, very huge need all around the world in treatment. We see in a lot of countries, Western countries, and all around the world, we see a lot of infected waste that is spreading around and not treated well. You see you see blood tubes in the streets. You see a lot of bags, and this need drives us to find a proper solution for how to treat the medical waste. What we invented is an innovative system for the optimal treatment of hazardous and infected medical waste. We believe in two main things. One is that the infected waste should be treated on site in the medical center, in the hospital, in the lab, not with transportation to the treatment center. And second thing, we believe in non-heat treatment, which is a very polluted and very, let's say, not sustainable way of treatment. So this is our machine, which is the Envomedati that Luke already showed you before. In 4 very simple steps and 20 minutes of cycle, we converted infected medical waste into, I will say clean, but I will say municipal waste. First of all, here we input the medical waste. We input the shower bins, the bags with blood tubes and syringes, everything. After that, there is a shredding process which shreds the waste and reduce the volume of the waste by 80 to 90%. Once all the waste is shredded, then it goes down to a sump, and inside the sump we stream chemical sterilization with chemical disinfectant. It's peracetic acid, and it's only 1%, and then we mix it together with water, and inside we're doing there's a 12 minutes process of mixing the shredded waste with the water and the disinfectant. At this time, 12 minutes, we ensure that all the shredded waste is treated and actually totally disinfected. We reach to a level of 6 log and the standard of stat 4. And after that, after all the waste has been treated, then it goes to the separation unit. The separation unit separated the solid waste from the liquids. The liquid go to the drain, and the solid waste go to the bin through this conveyor. Once it reach the conveyor, it's clean with no infections, no microbes, no spores. So why choose that? If you ask me, I will not be so objective, because I think this is the best available technology for waste treatment. As I said before, we believe in on-site. We believe that the autoclaves and microwaves and transport belongs to the past. And the Envomed solution that is sustainable, is safe, and save money to the hospital. This is let's say the technology or the future technology for the waste treatment. A little bit about the machine. As I said before, it reduced the volume of the waste up to 80 to 90%. It depends on the volume. It's fully validated. We did around 1 year of validations before we went to the market, before we started to market our machine. And the validation shows and they prove that the waste is totally clean and without any microbes after the treatment. And what is very relevant to our webinar, and it's very, very important, is that this is the only technology that enable recycle of the plastics or of the waste after the treatment. which you cannot find in when you do the heat process, because after the heat process the plastics is melted and it's very difficult to recycle it. As I said, it suits a wide range of medical waste. We can use plastic, we can use metals, we can use the glass, we can use a PPE inside the machine. You know, we speak about plastics, and we know that in most of the hospitals, plastics is the most available. Let's say is the most available most usable and most available in the medical field, and the use of plastic will grow. And this is something that we need to need to know. We need to take under consideration. We saw here the examples of how not to use plastics, and we show when you use plastics, what is the best way to treat it, and what is the best way after that to recycle it. It's very safe to the operator. The machine has all the standards, all the safety standards that need for electricity and for safety. And I think the most important thing is that there is no noise, of course, no odor, and the emission-free machine. The energy consumption is only water, is only electricity, and is very low energy consumption. It's very simple to use it, and we have a very smart software that collects all the data from the machine and stream it to a cloud-based database. And the operator and the owner of let's say the managers of the hospital and medical center or laboratory can use this data to see how the machine is working and how much what is the amount of waste that they treated during the day, during the week. There's a lot of statistics that you can take out from this data. As I said, we have some machines here in Israel, and we have machines in Europe, in Finland, in Sweden. We are now beginning a pilot in France. We're beginning a pilot in Australia, in the Philippines, and we hope to start the next pilot together with Lampadina here in the UK, which we are very excited for it. Two very important things. One, we won. I think that most of you know Takeda. Takeda is one of the biggest, the Japanese pharmaceutical company, and they own in the USA. They own blood plasma donation centers. They have a lot of plastics during the process of the plasma donation. And they made a challenge, and we won a challenge, the Takeda's challenge to reduce their plastics in their US centers. So hopefully until the end of the year we will start a pilot with them, and once this pilot will succeed, then we will cover most of their centers in the US with our machines to reduce their plastic waste and to take it for recycling. And another very important thing is that we've been selected to be part of the Israelis official technology delegation to the World Climate Summit that will be held in Baku next month. And this is something that we are very proud, and it's a good opportunity for us to show our solution, to speak with governments and organization to convince that what I said before, on-site non-heat treatment is let's say the optimal, I won't say best, but but let's say the optimal treatment for infected medical waste. Here.
Did we lose? Oh no, you're back. Sorry, I thought we'd lost you.
Okay, sorry. Now you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you again. This is my contact. You can contact me. You can contact Luke. And thank you very much for listening and for the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And don't you worry about English not being your first language. There's a lot of people in the same boat, and we do want to make sure that everyone is absolutely welcome. You're better at speaking English than I sometimes feel that I am. So don't worry about that at all. Okay, so one of the first questions on here from Harriet. Harriet, you will receive this. You won't receive the actual presentations by email, but what we do is we post this whole video up to our YouTube channel. We do a full write-up on our website, which will have all of those presentations embedded for you to then download, but you will receive an email link to the write-up. So in a long answer to your question, you will technically receive everything by email. So you just wait for that coming up next week. At some point that'll be going live. So Richard, I wanted to know, have you ever seen anything like what the guys at Envomed are doing? Do you think that this is what we've kind of been looking for, or do you feel like there's other things that are happening in the UK that we're already doing that are similar to this?
To be honest, Georgia, no, this is the first I've heard about it. So thank you for that. Always good to know what is on the landscape. As for, how this fits into our solution planning, well, I have to say, I think at the moment, with the scale of the problem that we have with respects to waste and pollution, we have to consider all options, both on-site and remote, and just look at the scale of the positive, hopefully, impacts that these can have by introducing them. So I think it's always unwise to exclude any option for consideration. As Dan says, we generate hundreds of thousands of tons worth of waste every year within our healthcare system, and we need to look at all innovations and assess them for potential adoption.
And I wondered, obviously, any trust of any size or any just facility can probably make sure they get a few bio bins in, because as Dan said, they do fold flat and you've got a lot of space. You can get a lot of bio bins in a small amount of space. Do you think that it's probably more the bigger trusts and the bigger facilities that would be able to invest in something like what Enviromed are offering?
I guess that depends upon a lot. Well, as we know, a lot of our decisions in healthcare are based upon price and costs, and so it may be more economical in certain sizes of organizations, but without knowing the kind of economics, it would be difficult to kind of difficult to think through exactly which organizations would benefit most from such technologies.
Yeah. So in terms of economics, Luke, we do have a question about price points for Recycle Lab. Do you have any of them to hand, or is it more of a bespoke service?
Yeah, no, I can absolutely say that. It's around £10 a bag, a 90-litre bag, so it's very transparent, the pricing. So yeah, 90 litres would be £10 to remove from site.
All right, great. That was
just picking up
very
on
easily
about the
question.
Envomed solution as well, Georgia.
Yes.
Something to add there. There is a payback on that instrument. So yes, there is an outgoing cost, and it is significant. It's a capex funded project at £110,000 roughly. But there is a payback in the reduction of the waste going off-site and the cost of that. So if you're reducing the cost of waste going off-site by 90%, that payback will be very quick. Some potential customers we're talking to more on science parks and those kind of places are actually looking to sell the waste as well, so it becomes a commodity, so the payback then becomes very fast. So if you can make sure you put good quality plastic in and it comes out good quality shredded clean plastic at the end, and you can sell it to the recycler, then the payback will be pretty quick, I would have thought.
So even more incentive to be engaging with that. So our good friend Alexis Percival, she is a big supporter of us at Sustainability Partnerships, and we always appreciate her commenting and coming in. So she has got a lot of interest in biobins. Dan, I don't know if you know Alexis, have you spoken to her before, but I think that one of your team may already be emailing her some of the details. But she does ask, do you think that there are opportunities for the biobins to be used as a resilience with a resilience aspect as well?
Well, that's a great question. On what particular angle? So when you say resilience, what exactly do you mean? Sorry.
Alexis, I wish I could bring you in to just speak on this. Unfortunately, if you can just quick major disasters, she says.
Oh yeah, I mean, but I think because they're so light and they are compact, they are able to be shipped out really easily, and they also get used very, very heavily in areas where people don't have much space, like ambulances, like when people are community nurses, community midwives, people like this who need to carry kind of small amounts of equipment and bring them to two places. So yeah, they can be used anywhere like that, and certainly there's lots of opportunity to see how you can reduce the amount of stuff you're carrying around with you as well when you're going on all these trips. So yeah, I would say yes, if that's what you meant.
Right. I hope that answered your question. There was also a question, and I think it may have been from Alexis as well, about which ambulance service you're trialing your spray in, Luke. Remind me of the brand name that you've...
Yeah, sure. So that's an ongoing trial with the manufacturer, actually, so I can't disclose that. But what I can say is we had a very successful trial at Northamptonshire Police, who actually rolled it out.
Right.
And it's a similar story there. They want their cars back on the road as quickly as possible once they've had a potential criminal in the back. And maybe they've made a mess. That car could be off the road for an hour, 2 hours while it's waited to be cleaned currently. Following the trial with Natural Armor, that was back on the road very, very quickly. And it actually improved the efficiency of the whole police force as well. And we're hoping that will be the same with the ambulances. Not only will they be more clean, but they'll actually be back on the road quicker as well. So we can disclose that once the trial's finished though.
Okay. Well, you let us know, Luke, and then we'll let our audience know as well when you've got some further updates on that. So I wanted to come back to you, Richard, on what I thought was a really pertinent point, and this is something that we have real conversations about at Sustainability Partnerships. It's for 3 years we've been doing these webinars, and it always comes back to those competing priorities, right? Around care being the #1 priority, and sustainability obviously rising up the ranks in terms of priorities, sometimes even being on the same, if not a higher level than the economic side of procurement. So how are you, and how can we, and how can our audience really get people to understand the fact that things like plastics are associated with harm? Therefore, we're in a vicious cycle. The same with carbon, in respiratory diseases, the more that we pump out, the more people become ill, the more people have to go to hospital, the more we have to use energy, etc. So it's the same with plastics. The more people are ingesting microplastics, the more people are becoming ill, the more people have to go to hospital, and the more plastic we produce. What are the more engaging ways? Because I found that you need carrot and stick, right? And we can't just be bad news guys all the time. So what are the engaging ways for us all to really think about and make mindset changes around saying, yes, I understand that if you feel that you need to put latex gloves on to deal with this patient, you will be caring for them better. But as a bigger picture, you're actually caring less for humanity as a whole. How do you go about telling that story?
Well, the way I'd explain it, Georgia, is think about the term first do no harm. Hundreds, if not a couple of thousand years old. it's a ethos that has underpinned medical care for all this time, and yet it was conceived when the relationship was a doctor-patient. The patient was in front of you, you were the doctor, you did not have international supply chains, pharmaceuticals, or plastics. So the whole ethos has now changed. If you do not consider planet and sustainability in your decision making, it is completely illogical, because you not only fuel your own workload, because if you cause harm to planet, you cause harm to people, but it is also really, really quite selfish, because actually the harms you cause disproportionately fall on those in lower income countries, those who have contributed least in the way of to climate change and to the pollution of our natural environments. So I absolutely believe that modern healthcare just has to adopt a completely new ethos. You always have to have one eye on the patient and one eye on the planet. And that to me is now first do no harm. And that is what I use whenever I talk to suppliers, procurement, etc., to justify why sometimes we need to spend a little bit more to reduce the harm that we are causing on a global level.
I mean, it's an amazing sentiment, and I think that we all can learn from that and try to spread that thought process a little bit more, and just be sort of like thinking a little bit more and be a little bit more mindful about that. Hagai, we have got more people interested in the EnvaMed stuff, and we're interested in where we're piloting in the UK. And if you do have smaller versions, I think that's kind of something that I was alluding to as well. It seems like it's something that would only really have space for it in a huge facility. And Luke, maybe you're going to be able to chime in as well, because I assume you're going to be doing the distribution in the UK. So if you guys can let us know how we're going to get this into the NHS supply chain, and maybe if there are plans for mini versions as well.
Okay, so first of all, we didn't start the pilot yet. We are in plans. We are planning together with Luke and Lampadina, and they will choose together with the customers where to do it, where to start it. Once we will start, we will be happy to announce it and to give the information. If someone wants to see a machine works, then a very good place to go is Finland, in Huslab, which is one of the biggest medical laboratory in Finland, and we also have in Estonia in their SynLab laboratory, which already started to work there. And that's it. Look, we're very happy to contact with Lampadina lately, and I'm sure that our values are connected and are the same in matter of sustainability, and we find this connection very, very good for us, and I'm sure that Luke can explain about it much better than me.
I won't be so sure, but yeah, the first trial that we're looking at, Georgia, is actually on a science park. This is where the landlord has tenants that they can recharge. So unfortunately, as kind of Richard alluded to earlier, like money does talk in sustainability. So this double payback is a bit of a no-brainer. We like no-brainer products here, like the biobins, which are cheaper and more sustainable. EnvaMed for a science park is a bit of a no-brainer. They're sending such huge tonnage of waste going off site, a huge cost, multiple delivery or collections rather a day. And a science park can have this instrument on site and charge the tenants a fee to use it, but also sell the plastic. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, and that's where we're going to probably have our first installation and definitely our first trial. So, but people are welcome to come and visit it. That's part of the deal when we do a trial. So anyone from the NHS is more than welcome to have a look at it and envisage it in their own setting.
Well, I hope that includes us as well, if you're inviting people. Great. I've only got a couple of minutes left. If there were any other questions, people can feel free to type, please, panelists, if there are any other questions for you. But we can always take this offline. I think all of our panelists, please, if you can put your contact details in here. If you want people to contact you, please put them in the chat now. I do need to tell you about things that are upcoming. So one of my team has already posted a link there for upcoming events. Our next webinar is going to be next month, transforming hospitals theatres. Again, this is one that's always been really, really pertinent, and it's been one that a lot of people have been interested in from day one. That's going to be on the 13th of November. And then in December, we have our Sustainability Partnership Awards. So I think that my team member, Davina, might be able to share the link to the awards page on the Sustainability Partnerships website. We have award categories for businesses, and we have award categories for the NHS. We do have a nice end of year webinar where it's all, we do the awards ceremony and everything. We don't do anything in a live event because we like to keep things nice and sustainable and agile as much as possible, but you do get an award sent out to you in the post. So all of the entries for both business and NHS are all absolutely free to enter. We've got some really good judges coming up. So if you are a business and you enter a business category, someone from the NHS will be judging your entries. So we have some pretty high profile judges coming up. So make sure that you get those entries in and you get them really sharp. Would love to hear everything that everyone's been doing. If you are in an NHS trust, equally, we would love to hear what you guys are doing. They will then be judged by, we have some sponsors for our NHS category. So really looking forward to hearing what everyone's been up to this year. There's a lot of categories to get involved with. It's not a hugely onerous process.
George, you're on mute.
Accidentally put myself on mute. God, I've been doing this long enough. So yeah, they're absolutely free, and it's not a hugely onerous task. So really, really would love to see some more entries on the awards from both sides. That's all the time that we have for today. I don't normally have 4 people on, so I'm absolutely ecstatic that I managed to get all of these guys to stick to their timeframes, which is not always the easiest task, but you can tell there was some hard Taskmaster bits from me before we went live, and everyone was absolutely perfect with their timekeeping, so I really appreciate that. As always, appreciate everyone who has come on and asked questions, got involved with the chat, everyone who's signed up. As usual, as I say, this will be going live on our website. All of the resources, all of the presentations, everything will also be live on the website again next week. Looking forward to seeing everyone next month, and then looking forward to seeing you again in December as we all celebrate our achievements in sustainability in healthcare. So thank you again to Richard, Dan, Luke and Hagai for joining us, and see you again next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jordan.